Hey everyone, and welcome back to D&D Analysis, the channel where we discuss and analyze Dungeons & Dragons, talk about the state of the game, rules and mechanics, showcase character builds, teach you how to build and run encounters as a DM, and most importantly, talk about how we actually play the game that we all love. My name is Joe, and today I'll be walking you through a level 1 to 20 build featuring what I'm calling the Ranger package from the One D&D playtest materials. I'm super excited about this video because I'm trying something entirely new. I'm going to show you this character in action in a real combat encounter, and it's only going to take 10 minutes to show you 8 full rounds of combat. So that's something to look forward to. If you're interested in this type of content, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and leaving a comment. All of this helps immensely, and I have a lot of fun stuff coming very soon. This new combat mechanic that I'm developing I think has a lot of potential, and I'm interested to see what kinds of encounters everyone wants to watch. I'm planning on featuring guides on balancing level appropriate encounters and showing how they actually play out, guides on designing homebrew monsters and showing them in combat so that you can see how powerful their abilities actually are, and lots of other things like that, including showcasing character builds that I do on the channel in action. And once I have enough character builds sort of stacked up, I'll just make parties out of all characters that I've already created, which I think is going to be super fun. So let me know what kind of combat encounters you want to see, and please stay tuned because the one that I have for today is really fun. If you're interested in learning more about what's changing in this new edition, especially regarding two-weapon fighting and weapon damage in general, check out my video, How to Build a Dual-Wielding Ranger in One D&D, where I explore the biggest changes coming to D&D by building a Ranger up to level 5. A large part of that video focuses on broader concepts and changes coming in the playtest material, while this video will present one build and take it all the way up to level 20. In D&D, Rangers are both martial characters and half-casters. With the recent revisions made to the class in 5e, and with some of the updated features showcased in the Expert Class UA, Rangers have gotten a good amount of love lately. They were never as weak as everyone thought, and now they are definitely strong. But would I build a Ranger all the way up to level 20? As things stand currently, no, I definitely wouldn't. Most of their great features are front-loaded, and you'll find that after extra attack, you're not really getting that much from taking more Ranger levels. The fact of the matter is that if you want to focus on damage, you don't really gain much after extra attack. And if you want to focus on spellcasting, you have to contend with the fact that full casters are so much better at it than half casters. Taking a bunch of Ranger levels just to eventually maybe get 3rd and 4th level spells before the campaign likely ends just really doesn't seem worth it. So what do we do if we want to build a Ranger but still want to be powerful in tiers 3 and 4? The obvious answer is multiclass, and since there are only a few classes released in the playtest material so far, I'm going to focus on multiclassing with Rogue, which is a natural pairing with Ranger, and there are many 5e multiclass builds that work really well with these two classes. So Rangers excel at 3 main things: dealing weapon damage, skills and expertise, and spellcasting. Skills and expertise has gotten even better in One D&D. Rangers get an additional expertise, and their spellcasting has gotten a lot better, as we will see. But if I want to make a build that focuses on weapon damage and really takes advantage of the changes that have been made to two-weapon fighting in One D&D, I think that multiclassing into Rogue is our best bet. I will be doing another video where I multiclass into Cleric to focus more on spellcasting, which I think is going to be really fun because Spirit Guardians, while making 3 attacks per turn, is going to be very powerful. So without further ado, let's get into the build. For our race, we're going to pick Human. Humans get several good features, including an extra skill proficiency, a free feat, and inspiration whenever they finish a long rest. For the skill, we'll take Medicine, since neither Rangers nor Rogues can choose it, and we're going to have a decent Wisdom score. For our free feat, we'll take Magic Initiate Arcane, taking the Dancing Lights and Minor Illusion cantrips, and Hex as our first level spell. Dancing Lights will be helpful since we are but a lowly human and don't have dark vision, but we also don't want to illuminate ourselves, so having a ranged light source is pretty cool, and Minor Illusion is a fun and versatile cantrip. Hex will give us some good sustained damage, and when it's coupled with Hunter's Mark later, as we'll see, it can lead to some really big numbers. We're going to take our first level in Rogue, and I have several reasons for wanting to do this. Number 1 is saving throws. Both Rangers and Rogues get proficiency in dexterity saving throws. Rogues then get intelligence saves, while Rangers get strength. I think an argument could be made for both, but I find that intelligence saves, while they may be less common even than strength, can be much more debilitating. The second reason are skills. Rogues get 4 skills to the Rangers 3, and skills and expertise are going to be important for this build. We'll take proficiency in stealth, perception, sleight of hand, and investigation, and we'll take expertise in stealth and perception. The rogue's starting equipment is mostly fine. However, for some reason they start you with leather armor and not studded leather armor, so we're going to use some of the gold that we get from our background to buy studded leather and also a scimitar. You can sell your leather armor to help fund this, and keep the rest of the equipment, including the 2 daggers, which can always come in handy. As far as background goes, in OneD&D, all backgrounds are basically custom backgrounds. So what we'll do is we'll pick the best features from each part and make up our own background. For ability score increases, you can either choose +2, +1, or +1, +1, +1. For our purposes, I'm going to choose +2, +1. Using point buy, we'll take 15 dex +2, giving us a 17, 15 con +1, giving us a 16, 14 wisdom, 10 intelligence, and 8 strength and charisma. We get 2 skills from our background. We will take acrobatics and survival. We get a tool proficiency. I'm going to take the herbalism kit. I think it fits with the background that I'm going for here. We get a feat from our background as well. For this build, I'm going to take lucky. I think that it's actually the most powerful first level feat on average, unless you have something specific to build for. For our language, we'll choose Elvish, and we get 50 gold. And as I mentioned before, we're going to sell our leather armor, buy some studded leather, and a scimitar. So just for fun, I want to look at some of the pre-generated backgrounds that have been released in the playtest and see if our character fits into any of those. So our character is lucky, nimble, slightly magical, insightful, and they're a human who speaks Elvish. I think that the guide background that's in the book, at least as far as the description goes, fits really nicely here. And I'll read that for you now. You came of age in the outdoors, far from settled lands. Your home? Anywhere you choose to unfurl your bedroll. There are wonders on the frontier, strange monsters, pristine forests and streams, overgrown ruins of great halls once trod by giants. And you learned to fend for yourself as you explored them. From time to time, you traveled with a pair of friendly druids, who were kind enough to instruct you in the fundamentals of channeling the magic of the wild. Now, if this were a background in 5e, it would come with some additional benefit, and for this one, I would imagine it would be something like, when in a town, you can always find directions to a location in the wild, or you can always find another guide to help you, or something along those lines. But unfortunately, those have been done away with. In the games that I DM, assuming none of this changes, I think that I'll certainly add in features like that for each of my players' backgrounds. I think it does add something to the game. For now, this background and description fits our character concept pretty well. I would encourage everybody to explore some of the pre-made backgrounds, but also create your own, including a paragraph of description for it. I think that adding creativity into the game only enhances it. So now that our background's complete, let's talk about what we get from level 1 as a rogue. We get proficiency in dex and int saves, as I mentioned. We get proficiency in stealth, perception, sleight of hand, investigation, and medicine from being a human. We get expertise in stealth and perception. We know the dancing lights and minor illusion cantrips, and the hex spell that we can use once per day. We're already a very good skill monkey. We can cover a lot of bases and bring out of combat utility, whether it's scouting, sneaking, pickpocketing, finding traps. We're already a very good rogue, even at level 1. We also get sneak attack, which finally has an updated description, making it a lot more clear about how to actually get sneak attack. There are 2 ways to qualify for sneak attack. Advantage. You have advantage on the attack roll. Ally adjacent to target. At least one of your allies is within 5 feet of the target. The ally isn't incapacitated, and you don't have disadvantage on the attack roll. The rules haven't changed, but the description has, and I think that it's a lot more clear now, which is really helpful. At this point, it's important to talk about the changes that are coming to 2-weapon fighting in OneD&D. As I said, if you want an in-depth discussion of these changes, check out my other video, How to Build a Dual-Wielding Ranger in OneD&D. So, instead of using your bonus action for your offhand attack, as was the case with 5e, it is now part of the same attack action, but you have to be holding a light weapon in both hands. So you swing with your main hand when you take the attack action, and as part of the same attack action, you can swing with your offhand. This is great for spells like Hex and Hunter's Mark, because those cost a bonus action to cast and to move to a new target. This is one of the things that made Ranger a little bit clunky and caused a lot of bonus action clog. Now that you no longer need your bonus action to make this attack, spells like Hex and Hunter's Mark got a lot better, and we're going to be using both at the same time. So starting right at level 1, our big combat move is going to be to cast Hex and then attack twice. And then if that target dies, move Hex as a bonus action and attack twice. This can lead to some pretty serious damage if both attacks hit, and we have sneak attack on one of them, potentially dealing up to 5d6 plus 6 damage if both attacks hit, or 21.5 damage per round on average. We'll do some actual damage calculations accounting for hit chance in a little bit, and as I said, I have a really cool combat encounter to show everybody, so you can see this character in action. So now that we've got our first level in Rogue, gaining those benefits that I talked about before, let's talk about the next 5 levels and what I'm calling the Ranger package, because these 5 levels of Ranger are going to be exceptionally good to multiclass into many different things with. So we need 13 Dex and 13 Wiz to multiclass with Ranger, and we need 13 Dex to multiclass out of Rogue, so we're all set with our ability scores. So let's talk about the Ranger package. With 5 levels of Ranger, we get 1 skill proficiency and 2 expertise. We're going to take Insight as our skill and take expertise in both Sleight of Hand and Investigation. Now you can customize all these skills and expertise yourself. You're getting 9 skills and 4 expertise, so you can basically do anything you want. What I'm focusing on is having all of the Dex and Wiz-based skills and expertise in the ones that I think are most important, such as Stealth, Perception, Sleight of Hand, and Investigation. These are all the things that rogues are generally good at. We get Spellcasting, which has been massively improved for Rangers in One D&D. In 5e, a 5th level Ranger would have 4 spells known and 4 spells prepared. Now, including 2 cantrips, we know 8 spells and have 8 spells prepared. Not to mention the 2 extra cantrips and the Hex spell from our first level feat, Arcane Initiate, as well as always having Hunter's Mark prepared for free, bringing us up to 12 spells known and 12 spells prepared as a level 5 half-caster. We get the 2-weapon fighting style, extra attack, a feat, and the Hunter's Prey feature from the Hunter subclass, which allows us to add a d8 damage die to 1 attack per turn as long as the enemy is missing some of its hit points. All in all, this 5-level package is incredibly powerful, and it makes for some great multi-classing options. The early levels won't even be that bad because you're just starting as a Ranger and going up to level 5. Now, we have delayed things by 1 level to get the benefits from taking our first level in Rogue, but still, you're going to feel like a complete character right from the beginning. For our feat, I'm going to take Defensive Duelist. It gives us a +1 bonus to our Dexterity, bumping it up to an 18. This brings our armor class to 16 while in our studded leather, and it also gives us a really cool reaction where we can add +3 to our armor class when we're hit by an attack. Let's say someone lands an attack on you with an 18, you can just parry it with your reaction. Along with the changes to Guidance and Resistance, which are now both reactions that can add a D4 to a failed ability check or saving throw respectively, we now have 3 awesome uses for our reaction, which is just great. So let's talk about spell choices. We know the Minor Illusion and Dancing Lights cantrips from our feat, and I'm picking Guidance and Resistance as I mentioned. We don't need a damage cantrip because we're a weapon user. We know 6 first level spells, including Hex and Hunter's Mark, along with Healing Word, Entangle, Goodberry, and Ensnaring Strike. We know 2 second level spells, and I'm picking Spike Growth and Pass Without Trace. The only spells that rely on our lackluster Wisdom score of 14 are Entangle and Ensnaring Strike, and I still think that they're worth casting in the right situations. If you can potentially restrain multiple enemies in your Entangle spell, even if 1 or 2 of them make their save, it can still be a combat-winning spell. Ensnaring Strike offers us a way to ground flying enemies since it works on ranged attacks, something that's always good to have in your bag when you're a melee weapon user. If you want to swap one of them for something like Long Strider, extra movement is never bad, but also we're prepared casters now, so we can change these out every single day. If you find yourself not using or not liking any of these spells, try something different. We have 4 first level spell slots and 2 second level spell slots, which should be plenty for the average adventuring day. In combat, we're making 3 attacks per turn every single turn, hopefully adding Hunter's Prey and Sneak Attack to one of those, and we have the ability to stack Hunter's Mark and Hex on the same target for massive damage. So now that the build is pretty much fully online, let's take 1 more level in Rogue, taking us to a character level 7, 5 Ranger and 2 Rogue, getting us Cunning Action, which allows us to take the Dash, Disengage, or Hide action as a bonus action. This is a clutch Rogue feature that allows for greater mobility and variety in combat. We won't be using the bonus action Hide during combat as much as a ranged weapon user would, but it could still come in handy. and I wanted to make sure that we got to cutting action before we actually took this character for a test drive. And now for the part that I'm really excited about. I've created a complete combat encounter, level appropriate for a party of level 7 adventurers. This is the first time that I've tried anything like this, and I will admit I made a few mistakes during combat. However, in the process of making this, I ran the scenario 2 different times all the way through, and I think that the outcome is fairly reasonable and fairly likely. I will say that from a DM perspective, the one thing that I changed here was I gave the orcs a lot more hit points. They each have 33 hit points to allow them to not just die immediately to a level 7 party. The rest of the monsters are all by the book. So without further ado, let's get into this adventure. 3 villagers have gone missing in the past 10 days, and your party has been hired to investigate their disappearance. Through the clever investigation and tracking of Ren, our rogue ranger hero, you've discovered bands of orcs patrolling the forest around an overgrown keep that was formerly a bandit hideout. They seem to be taking orders from a strange man in simple clothes who carries a long quarterstaff. Through distraction and stealth, thanks in large part to Ren's Pass Without Trace spell, you've managed to isolate and destroy several smaller groups of orcs while remaining unnoticed. Bibby, the gnome wizard, and his faithful familiar Artemis the owl, along with Davian, the dragonborn paladin, sneak along the western wall of an open chamber, overhearing several orcs and their warchief talking with the strange man. Ren glides soundlessly down the adjacent hallway. The party easily sneaks into the ruined fortress with some much needed help from Ren's Pass Without Trace spell. The lowest roll of 7 becomes a 17, beating the passive perception of all the enemies. The enemies will be surprised. Initiative is rolled, the stage is set, it's time to act. Ren makes a flanking maneuver around the left side, coming up directly behind one of the orcs. The first scimitar strike misses, the second one hits, dealing 8 slashing damage. The short sword attack misses. And then he casts Hunter's Mark on the orc warchief in the back. Next up is Bibby, who steps out from behind cover and begins casting a spell. The 2 orcs in front of him are consumed in a cone of fear. They both make wisdom saves. One of them succeeds and one fails. Bibby then sends his trusty owl familiar Artemis in to distract the orc faced with Ren, giving him advantage on the next attack. Bibby then retreats behind cover once more as Davian, the paladin, charges forward and casts Bless on all 3 party members. Ren casts Hex on the orc warchief, and his blades flash once more against the orc in front of him. A 15 with his scimitar will hit, and now with advantage, and since the orc has taken damage, Hunter's Prey and Sneak Attack are both in effect. He deals 24 damage with a single strike. Second scimitar attack hits as well, felling the orc with 8 slashing damage. He charges forward to their leader, who is now afflicted with both Hex and Hunter's Mark, and lunges with his short sword. 19 will hit, dealing 12 damage. The orcs are next. One of them moves into a flanking position. It is still unable to hit Ren. The second orc attacks Davian. A 20 will miss his 21 AC. Bibby now sends Artemis to distract the warchief, giving Ren advantage on his next attack. Then he steps out and fires 4 darts of magical force that all strike the warchief simultaneously. The mysterious stranger, unable to act until now, vanishes into thin air. The orc warchief lets out a mighty battle cry, giving advantage to himself and his allies. He swings with his great axe, getting a 16 to hit. Ren parries with defensive duelist. Second attack is a 19. 21 slashing damage to Ren. Third attack is a 23. 19 more slashing damage to Ren. He's just taken 40 damage and is in trouble. Davian sees his friend in need, pushes past the frightened orc, who misses his attack of opportunity. Davian swings his warhammer at the orc flanking Ren. A 16 strikes true, and he uses a first level Divine Smite, adding 5 radiant damage to his 11 bludgeoning. brings his hammer down once more. Again, Divine Smite. 5 bludgeoning damage, and 8 radiant. Ren swings his scimitar at the orc behind him, wheels around with his short sword, getting a critical hit, felling the orc with 12 damage. His attack with advantage on the orc warchief is an 18, which will hit. He deals 15 damage with a single strike. The frightened orc hurls a javelin at Davian and misses. Artemis swoops in and claws at the orc warchief's head once more. Bibby steps out from behind cover, muttering an arcane incantation as he casts dissonant whispers on the orc warchief, who just barely makes his wisdom save, meeting Bibby's 15 spell save DC. Bibby finishes the incantation and takes cover. The mysterious stranger reappears out of nowhere, now 8 feet tall, terrible to behold, and in place of its walking stick, a massive glaive that it brings down on Ren and Davian in turn. The first attack misses Ren, the second misses Davian. Orc Warchief attacks Ren once more, who is able to parry again with his short sword. The second attack misses. Davian gathers all of his divine power and channels it into a conquering presence, attempting to frighten all 3 enemies. They must all make wisdom saves. The Orc Warchief fails, the Orc fails, and the Oni fails. They are now all frightened of Davian. The frightened Orc, now unable to move in Davian's aura of conquest, can do nothing but hurl another javelin at disadvantage, missing terribly as his hands shake with fear. Artemis moves in to distract the Oni, giving advantage on the next attack against it. Then takes cover behind a pillar. Bibby steps out and hurls 3 more darts of magical force at the Orc Warchief. The Oni takes a huge breath, exhales a cone of magical ice, enveloping Ren and Davian as it casts Cone of Cold. They must both make Constitution saving throws. A 14 passes. A 16 passes with the aid of Davian's aura of protection. They both take 12 cold damage as they brace themselves against the magical attack. The Warchief, now swinging with disadvantage, misses Ren with the first attack, and as its courage begins to falter, its second attempt is not even close. Davian, seeing Ren nearly on death's door, moves forward and reaches out his hand. Holy energy envelops Ren, and he's healed for 30 hit points. Davian then interposes himself between the Oni and his friend. With his courage renewed, standing next to his companion, Ren swings his scimitar at the Orc Warchief, landing a critical hit. With all of his resources now stacked upon this one target, the strike deals massive damage, felling the Orc Warchief with exactly 41 damage. He moves his Hunter's Mark over to the Oni, and swings with his short sword, getting a 17, which strikes the Oni for 13 damage. 3 more orcs that were on patrol enter the fortress from the north, coming up behind Bibby. They hurl 3 javelins at him. 2 of them connect. The first deals 6 piercing damage, and Bibby is able to make his concentration check. The second deals 5 more damage, and he makes his concentration check once more. Seeing the new threat appear behind him, Bibby conjures a magical web in an attempt to restrain the orcs. Artemis then swoops in, distracting the Oni to give advantage on the next attack against it. At the start of the Oni's turn, it regains 10 hit points, but then it loses 3 from Davian's aura. It swings with its glaive, getting 17 to hit because it's swinging with disadvantage. Ren parries. The next strike with disadvantage misses wide. Davian swings his warhammer. 17 hits the Oni. 8 bludgeoning damage. And now a second level smite for 17 radiant damage. The Oni is still frightened of Davian as he swings his hammer once more. Davian was able to keep concentration on Bless after the Cone of Cold hit him, but his last attack misses. Ren sees a perfect opening and slashes with his scimitar, cutting deeply across the Oni's chest. A critical hit, once again with all of his resources stacked on one target. The crit deals massive damage, as he takes 40 hit points from the Oni in one strike. His second attack with the scimitar also hits, dealing 17 more damage, 57 damage in a single turn. Impressive. The Oni is just able to dodge the last short sword attack. 2 orcs in Bibby's magical web fail their dexterity saves and are restrained. The third one is able to barely skirt around, charges Bibby with its axe held high. Bringing it down, 22 will hit, 15 slashing damage. Bibby is able to make his concentration check. The web stays intact. One of the orcs is able to break free from the webbing. It charges Bibby, but it had to use its action to break free, and it doesn't have quite enough movement to get to him. Bibby, seeing the impending danger, transforms into a cloud of silvery mist and reappears near Artemis, who takes cover behind the pillar. Artemis once again claws at the face of the Oni, who is bleeding profusely. It regains some of its health at the start of its turn, and strikes out with its glaive 2 more times, attempting to bring one of its assailants down with it. Attacking at disadvantage, the orc gets a 17, and Ren parries using his defensive duelist again. Second strike is an 11, and it misses. One orc was finally able to break its fear, and it swings its great axe at Davian, but a 17 misses. The Oni finally breaks Davian's conquering presence, but is it too late? Davian swings his warhammer and hits the Oni for 5 bludgeoning damage, and 10 radiant. He hits once more with a 16, 8 more bludgeoning damage, but Davian is out of spell slots, cannot smite. Ren strikes with his scimitar, getting a 23 to hit. The attack deals 25 damage, felling the vile creature. He moves his hunter's mark to the nearby orc. 23 hits for 13 damage. His last short sword attack also hits for 14 more damage. The orc, seeing his companions lying dead around him, disengages and attempts to flee. The one orc still caught in the web is unable to free himself. Seeing their leader dead, one of their companions restrained and the other fleeing, the 2 orcs ponder their choices. One of them decides to flee and dashes out of the combat.
What a mess!
The other one musters its last remaining courage, steps forth to hurl a javelin at Ren. Its trembling hand makes the javelin sail wide and realizes its folly.
Oh no!
Bibby, sensing that the tides are turning, comes out from cover and hurls a firebolt at the orc, just missing. Davian gives chase, swinging his warhammer twice, connecting once for 8 bludgeoning damage. Ren follows his adventuring companion into the fray once more, finds himself shoulder to shoulder with the stalwart paladin. A familiar place that gives him a sense of power. Artemis claws at the orc as it attempts to flee. Ren strikes out with his scimitar, hitting the orc, dealing just enough damage to kill it. He drops his scimitar, draws a dagger, and hurls it at the final orc. Buries itself in the orc's neck, falls to the ground, dead. The last orc restrained in the web will be captured and interrogated. As you can see here, this encounter will be rated deadly for a party of 3 level 7s. I have, in fact, boosted the orcs' hit points up to 33 each, but changed nothing else in their stat block. They have a +5 to hit, which is not great, but they still have a chance to hit any of the party members. The Orc Warchief is fairly formidable with his 16 AC, 93 hit points, and decent damage, dealing 15 on average. He has a +6 to hit, and he can give himself and his allies advantage for 1 turn while making a 3rd attack as a bonus action. It looks like I actually misused the battle cry effect, further evidence that it's hard to run 6 different characters in one combat. Battlecry is an action, so he would be able to give advantage to all his allies and make 1 attack as a bonus action. I gave him 3 attacks, but that balances out some of the mistakes I made in the party's favor. The Oni, once again, is a CR7, so supposed to be level appropriate for a party of level 7s. It has 16 AC, 110 hit points, it can fly, and it has some spell casting. I did use Invisibility and Cone of Cold, which I think are the 2 most powerful spells the Oni has. It has magic weapons, it regenerates 10 hit points, it makes 2 attacks with its glaive, dealing 15 on average. It can shape change. I used that shape change to make it large, giving it that extra damage. Well, that was really fun for me. I hope you enjoyed it too. Remember, please leave a comment with any monsters or classes that you'd like to see in videos like this. I do acknowledge that I made a few mistakes. Ren never rolled a concentration check for 1, and some of these may have caused the combat to go on for 1 more round. However, I still think the good guys would have won. As I said, I ran this scenario twice, and the result was the same, although the way that we got there was very different on the first and second attempts. The first time I ran the scenario, the Oni actually never got feared and was able to attempt to escape using its gaseous form spell and going through a crack in the castle wall. But Ren, being able to dash twice, was able to double dash using cunning action and catch the Oni and kill it. So this means that a party of 3 level 7 characters can confidently take on a deadly challenge, featuring a CR7, a CR4, and 6 CR1/2 orcs that were probably at least a CR1 with their hit points more than doubled. Future videos will focus on how to balance encounters, but I hope this demonstrates that a party of 3 can really take on a lot. So where do we go from here? More ranger levels don't really give us a whole lot. We get very slow spell progression, some utility, and no real damage increase to speak of. Taking the rest of our levels in Rogue, however, offers us quite a bit. We get a linear increase to damage of 1d6 every 2 levels through sneak attack, which isn't much, but it's better than Ranger. And we get more expertise, the entire Thief subclass, and lots more. Let's take a look at what each of these levels looks like and what we gain from them. So for levels 8 and 9, we're going to go to Rogue 4, meaning we would be a Rogue 4, Ranger 5. We get the 3rd level features of the Thief subclass and an extra 1d6 to sneak attack. Now the Thief has been slightly nerfed, which is unfortunate, in that you can no longer use an object as a bonus action. But with the search action now being codified, being able to do that as a bonus action might actually come in handy during combat. And not wasting your action searching, picking a lock, disarming a trap, or pickpocketing someone could come in handy once in a while. Second story work is still solid. A climbing speed equal to your walking speed is just really good. So at Rogue 4, we get another feat. And if I were playing this character starting at a low level in a campaign that might not get above level 10 or so, I would definitely cap Dex here with a +2 to Dex. Since I'm exploring the build all the way to level 20, I don't feel that's totally necessary. And I want to take advantage of Rogue's extra level 10 feat to stack some nice half feats. I think Mage Slayer is really strong, so I'm going to take that at Rogue 4. We gain a +1 to Dex, bringing it to 19, which we can round off in 4 more levels. And enemies that we force to make concentration checks have disadvantage on those checks. With us being a melee frontliner making many attacks, I think that breaking concentration is going to be one of our strengths, and this really just fortifies it. Furthermore, we can choose to succeed on an intelligence, wisdom, or charisma saving throw once per day. That can be extremely powerful, and a clutch save can turn the tide of a combat. I really like this revised feat, and I can't wait to play with it. So looking at levels 9 through 13, we're going to take 4 more levels of Rogue, bringing us to a Rogue 8, Ranger 5. We get Uncanny Dodge, which adds to our ever-growing list of reactions we can use in combat. This one allows us to cut the damage in half when we're hit by an attack. So if we can't parry with Defensive Duelist, we can simply take half damage, which is awesome. We get advantage on all stealth checks at Thief Rogue 6. That's pretty amazing. We'll almost never fail a stealth check, ever again. We get 2 more expertise. I'm taking Acrobatics and Insight, though you can manage your skills however you want, seeing as you have 8 skills and 6 expertise. Sneak Attack is now 4d6, and finally we get another feat. With a Dex of 19, I'm definitely taking another half feat here, and Speedster is looking pretty good to me. It caps our Dex at 20, gives us +10 movement speed, and when we dash, which we can do twice per turn, soon to be 3 times per turn, difficult terrain doesn't affect us. More mobility is great for a dual-wielding striker. Now levels 14 to 17, you guessed it, 4 more levels of Rogue. This takes us to Rogue 12, Ranger 5. We get Evasion, which is pushed back to level 9 in One D&D, but still an amazing feature, allowing us to take 0 damage on a successful dexterity saving throw, or half damage even if we fail to save. We get 2 feats, the Use Magic Device Thief subclass feature, which allows us to attune to a 4th magic item, to potentially not use charges from magic items, and to use any scroll that bears a cantrip or a 1st level spell. We can also attempt to use higher level scrolls. The extra attunement slot is really the best part of this feature, the rest of it's a little lackluster. But you never know, your party might find a powerful scroll and you might be the only one who can even attempt to use it. Lastly, we get Reliable Talent, meaning we cannot roll below a 10 on any skill check. Our bonus on the 8 skills that we're proficient in ranges from a +8 to a +17. So that means the lowest we can roll is an 18 on our worst skill, and the lowest we can roll is a 27 on our best skill. For the 2 feats, I think I'm going the boring route and bumping Constitution by +4, capping it at 20. We're a frontliner with 17 AC, which can be boosted to 20 as a reaction with Defensive Duelist. We have 5 D10 hit die, but the rest are only going to be D8s, and we definitely will be taking damage. This helps our concentration checks as well. One thing I might change with this build is trying to start with an odd wisdom score and bump it up to an even score with Warcaster at some point, leaving Constitution at 18. We could also try to build an odd con score and bump that up to an even score with Resilient Con. Protecting our concentration will be fairly important with our limited spell slots and the fact that we're a frontliner. Alright, the home stretch, levels 18 to 20. 3 more levels of Rogue, bringing us to Rogue 15 and Ranger 5. Levels 13, 14, and 15 of Rogue give us a few nice features actually. Our sneak attack caps at 8d6, And who doesn't love a free single target fireball every turn? We get subtle strikes, which means we have advantage on attacks when one of our allies is within 5 feet of the target. We basically get pack tactics, which is amazing. You may have noticed that this build doesn't have a reliable way to activate sneak attack. For this reason, it's important to play this character in a group that has another frontliner, preferably the tanky type. The Thief Capstone at level 14 gives us a second bonus action. We can use it proficiency bonus times per day, which is 6 for us, and the action must be from the cunning action list. This is pretty cool. It may not be the most powerful feature, but it will give us even more variety and mobility in combat. We can now dash 3 times, moving up to 120 feet in a single turn. We could dash, disengage, and still attack 3 times with our action. We can cast a spell with our regular bonus action, then use cunning action with our second bonus action, and still have 3 attacks. Overall, I think this feature is actually going to be really fun to play with. Finally, we get proficiency in wisdom saving throws, which is great for us. It brings our wisdom save up to +8. So let's take a look at this character over the course of its entire career. The character is a frontline striker, dealing multiple attacks per turn. They have tons of skills and expertise, some spell casting, even some healing and support, some control, crazy mobility. They're hard to kill and really fun to play. Here we see Ren's level 20 character sheet, 5 levels of Ranger and 15 levels of Rogue. With maxing out Constitution, he has 208 hit points, which is great for a frontliner. AC of 17, which again can be boosted by 3 with Defensive Duelist. And keep in mind, this is with 0 magic items. By level 20, Ren has 4 attunement slots and would probably be really kitted out. You can see the ability checks are incredibly strong. +17 to acrobatics, sleight of hand and stealth, +14 to perception, passive perception of 24, passive investigation of 22, passive insight of 24. Got some proficiencies, and overall is just a really well-rounded character. Here are some average damage breakpoints at levels 5, 10, 15, and 20. Keep in mind, this does assume both Hex and Hunter's Mark are active on the same target, which you won't always have, but with both of them having an hour duration, and you being able to cast them twice per day, you could feasibly have both active in up to 4 or even 5 combats in a single day, depending on what situation your party is in. At level 5 versus 15 AC, we would do 36.4 damage per round. At level 10 versus 17 AC, we would do 42.9. At level 15 versus 18 AC, we would do 58.1. At level 20 versus 19 AC, we would do 65.3. These AC numbers are all at the high end of the range for these levels. So when you're not fighting a big boss monster or a particularly tough enemy, you'll be doing more damage. So with the loss of Great Weapon Master and Sharpshooter, and without seeing anything in the warrior classes yet, it's hard to say if this is good damage or not. But even if this character was dropped into a 5e campaign, I think they would pull their weight just fine. So that's it for the Rogue Ranger multiclass. Stay tuned for more builds focusing on One D&D and some 5e builds as well as more combat videos, which I'm very, very excited to do. I have cool ideas for the next video. It's going to be a Cleric Ranger multiclass, because once again, after level 5, you don't get a ton from Ranger, but the Ranger package is so good that it's worth trying other multiclasses. And if you want to focus on spellcasting, Cleric or Druid is going to be your best bet. Since we have the Cleric UAR ready, I'm going to start with that one. If you like this content, please like the video, subscribe to the channel so you can see when I drop new videos, and leave comments telling me what you'd like to see. I'm very open to suggestions, and especially with all the new combat videos I'm planning, I would love new ideas. What level do you want to see encounters balanced for? Are there any iconic monsters that you want to see? Did you accidentally TPK your party with a big monster and you want to know what you could have done differently? Leave these and any other questions in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.